Hello and welcome to WILS Hagwon. My name is Luke and I'm in charge of the math and physics courses here at WILS. And what I'd like to do today is take you through an overview of the math courses at WILS. Now, all of our courses at WILS are designed for students who wish to study abroad, either in the UK or the USA, or perhaps at an international school in Korea. Starting with the UK syllabus, we begin with Pre-GCSE, which is for age 12 to 13 students in the UK. Now, this material is very subjective. It depends on the level of the student, so we have to determine the material individually based on the student's current math ability. The next level is, of course, GCSE. Students in England will take the GCSE when they are 16 after preparing for roughly 3 years. The GCSE is quite a tough exam for Korean students, particularly because it involves a lot of writing and written explanations for the method you have used, which is really tough. So we do a lot of work at this stage to introduce the correct vocabulary and terminology so that the students can tackle these kinds of questions. And then we move on to the A-level course. Now, the A-level is a modular course. Students will be required to complete 6 math modules to gain a full A-level, and I will describe that a little more in depth a little later on. The USA syllabus begins with pre-SAT material. Much like pre-GCSE, that needs to be determined individually with the student based on their current level. Then there is the SAT. The SAT is a fairly easy exam for Korean students, partly because it is multiple choice and also because the USA syllabus mirrors the Korean syllabus quite closely. So Korean students typically begin this course at a higher level than their American counterparts. But there are some tricky areas and we need to work with the students, particularly on the comprehension of the questions. So introducing perhaps some new vocabulary and terminology so that they can understand and correctly answer the questions. Now, the last stage of the American syllabus is AP Math, Advanced Placement. This is much more challenging than SAT. It introduces a whole array of new topics that we will need to teach from scratch. So this is a really challenging course and requires both a lot of work from the student and a lot of teaching time because simply there is a large volume of new material. Now, moving on to our teaching philosophy at WILS. First, it's very important for us to assess where each student is currently strong and where they are weak. Now, typically, the best way to do this is to sit them down with an exam paper and see which sections they recognize and which sections they do not recognize. Once we have achieved this, we immediately begin teaching the new material or the material the student perhaps doesn't understand from the Korean school. This typically doesn't take too long, especially for the American SAT, since Korean students already generally have a good grasp of math at this age. The next step is perhaps the most important. This is where we introduce the correct vocabulary and terminology so that they can provide written answers in their exam. This is really challenging for Korean students and requires a lot of practice. We give the students many model answers which they can study, and this brings us on to the third part, which is exam practice. It is vital that the students have a lot of practice doing the exams and seeing these types of questions. Once they have seen a similar question perhaps 5 or 6 times, they really grow in confidence and they are able much better to tackle these questions. So that is a really important part of our course, and we aim to do as much exam practice as possible in general. Now, this shows what a typical student's progression may look like. Here they are starting our course, and typically Korean students already have a good mathematical ability. So our job here is to increase that ability by teaching the new topics or new areas they perhaps aren't so comfortable with. The next section that we aim to really help them improve is, of course, the written answers. Give them the vocabulary, the terminology they need to answer those really tricky explanation type questions. And the last part, of course, is exam practice. Korean students won't have had practice on these kind of exams before, so it's really important we get them used to the style of the questions and the time allocation for the paper. And there's a lot of variables depending on which part of the course they're studying, so we really need to help them become comfortable with those areas of the exam. Now, moving on to the UK course. Part 1 is the GCSE. I'd say in general, Korean students find the GCSE quite challenging. That is because there are some new topics, particularly graphs and transformations, which they may not have studied before in Korea. And also there's quite a few written answers the students have to give. They have to explain why they chose a particular method or explain the result to a particular question. That is really tricky and requires us to go through a lot of worked examples together until they become used to that kind of style of writing. Now, the main areas of GCSE are algebra, of course, geometry, and numbers. Again, exam practice is the key to success. Moving on to part 2 of the UK course, this is the A-level course. This is quite a complicated thing to explain because the A-level course is modular. Now, an AS level is an intermediate step between GCSE and A-level. To gain an AS level, you require 3 modules in math. So you have to sit 3 of these modules I've put up here. A full A-level is 6 modules, so you need to add a further 3 more. That is generally what we recommend for most students, a full A-level, 6 modules. If you already are certain you wish to study math at university, or perhaps a subject like engineering, then you may wish to do even more than a full A-level. It is possible to do an A-level and a further AS level, which of course will be 9 modules, or even 2 full A-levels, which will be the full 12 modules. Now, we can individually determine with the student which modules they'd like to take, and now I'll take you through the options for those modules. We begin with core math, which introduces some quadratics, differentiation, and integration. Now, we recommend that for the average student who is going for a 1 full A-level, which is 6 modules, we recommend that they take core math C1, C2, C3, and C4, because as the name suggests, it is core and it gives them a good foundation of math for the further modules and for whatever they would like to study at university. The next set are the statistics modules, which of course introduce statistics, probability, and distributions. These go through S1, S2, and S3. Again, for the average student, we would recommend they take S1 as part of a single A-level. It's quite an easy module, and it really depends less on the student's writing ability, more on their mathematical ability, which is always great for Korean students. Now, the next part is decision math. We'd recommend decision math for someone who wants to study computing or a computer-related degree at university. Here it introduces algorithms and sorting and matching. The last part is mechanics. Mechanics is quite a challenging set of modules, M1, M2, and M3, and really we'd only recommend this for a student who wishes to also study physics at A-level. There is a lot of overlap between mechanics in math and the physics math that they will do at A-level. So that is the kind of student we would recommend mechanics for. Otherwise, it's quite a difficult subject, so we tend to suggest the students try more core statistics or decision modules rather than mechanics modules. So that is the UK syllabus. Now moving on to the US syllabus, starting with SAT. The SAT mirrors the UK GCSE. They are both sat when students are around the age of 16, so this will be perhaps junior or senior year of high school. The SAT also has three main topics, algebra, geometry, and numbers. The SAT, importantly, is a multiple choice exam, so there's less opportunity for written answers, which is great. It makes it much easier for Korean students, and generally we find our students really excel in this exam. Again, exam practice is the key to success in helping them to read and understand the questions. But this is a very pleasant exam for Korean students to take. They're very used to the material, and generally it's not stretching their abilities too much. Now, moving on to the second part of the USA course, this is AP or Advanced Placement Maths. Now, this is much more challenging than the SAT course, and because of that it begins with a section called Pre-Calculus. In Pre-Calculus, they are bridging the gap between SAT and the main calculus modules, which are Calculus AB and Calculus BC. Now, in Pre-Calculus, we begin with introducing some new trigonometry, particularly cosine, sine, and tangent graphs, and then some more material such as graphs and transformations, and logarithms and exponentials. Now, these are all topics that are likely to be new for Korean students, even if they are at the same age as their USA counterparts. So this requires a lot of teaching time and a lot of work from the student to get up to this level. Once they reach that level and have finished the pre-calculus course, they are ready to start Calculus AB. Now, Calculus AB, the main parts are integration and differentiation, and it also introduces some functions, graphs, and limits. Again, this is a really challenging course, and we recommend that the students put a lot of time into this course if they wish to take it. A lot of the material is new, it's very challenging, and it goes right up to a before university level of math, or even perhaps a first year university level of math. So again, we need a lot of teaching time to explain all the new concepts and help the students really understand the new topics which they will not have studied before. The last part is Calculus BC. This is very similar to Calculus AB, it just takes the same topics and really goes further with them. It also introduces some new polynomial approximations and of course series. That's an extra addition in Calculus BC. Again, this topic is really challenging. It requires a lot of work from the student and a lot of teaching time. Now, those were the main parts of our math courses here at WILS. Before I go, I'd like to summarize once again what we can offer to students. So, looking at the UK course, starting with Pre-GCSE, age 12 or 13, moving on to GCSE, where the focus is really on the writing and the vocabulary so that they can explain their answers, and then on to A-level math, which is the modular based math course. We recommend students take about 6 modules and study those over the course of 2 years. It's typically what happens in the UK. And of course the USA syllabus begins with pre-SAT. The same as pre-GCSE, we determine the material depending on the student. The SAT course is typically one Korean students find quite easy to adjust to. They've already studied a lot of the material, and really we just need to help them with the reading comprehension and perhaps a couple of topics like graphs and transformations. And then of course the last part of the US syllabus is AP Math, which is very challenging. It takes them right up to a university level of mathematics, and we really recommend that they do a lot of work and have a lot of teaching hours if they wish to take this part of our math course. It's quite challenging, but many of our students have completed it well and have successfully studied in the USA as a result. Okay, those are all our math courses here at WILS. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions or queries, please head on over to our website at www.wils.co.kr. Thank you very much for listening. Bye bye.